Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of The Monsters Den. We probably should pull out our guns today, right? Because this is our war episode. Right? Today we're going to break a little bit from the norm. Instead of talking about monster horror, fantasy, sci-fi movies, today we're going to talk about our favorite war films. This follows up our Western show that we did not that long ago. But before we start talking about our favorite Western war films, got Western on the brain, been watching too much Clint Eastwood lately. Let me introduce the crew. The birthday boy right down below me, at least the way I'm seeing it, Mr. David Gallagher is in the
Woo!
house, all the way from
Hey.
Happy birthday,
Scotland.
Davey.
Thank you.
Oh, in the house.
Yes, Craig Kaminsky is here. The King is here. Chris Allo, Dan Brown is here, and he's next to me here in the Zoom, at least the way I'm seeing it, Mr. Jamie Laszlo. What's going on, my friends?
What's
What's
going
up?
on, fellas?
Back on track.
Back
Missed
on
it.
track. We are here once again and ready to talk about our favorite war films. I love war films personally. I own a ton of them, and it's interesting trying to pick like favorites because
Tough.
I think a lot of us tried to pick some from different eras and whatnot, or movies that feature different wars in them and whatnot. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody has and what they're going to talk about today. So, Davey, why don't you kick us off with your three picks for war films here on the Monsters Den?
Okay, okay. As you mentioned there, Pete, it's quite an interesting topic because war isn't a genre. You can do different types of film inside the war film, can't you? You can do comedy, you can do romance, you can do, horrific realism, you can do documentary. So it's really a backdrop to a genre, if nothing else. So didn't want to pick something too flippant for all three choices because a while ago we did Spielberg films and I decided not to pick Schindler's List for any of the three, even though I think it's one of his best films because, when you're talking about spaceships and close encounters, you don't want to flip over to the Holocaust. But with three choices on this list to talk about war films, yeah, I think there's a little room to talk about some real horror, which, we obviously, as you mentioned there, talk about horror every month, but these are much more visceral and real horrors in a lot of ways. So I've only picked one of that because we don't want it all to be, miserable and depressing and dark and whatnot. So, I could have picked something like Shoah or Sorrow and the Pity or, all those great documentaries of the Second World War. The Second World War is probably the most fruitful war for this kind of topic, probably simply because the Nazis are the best bad guys for films, no matter what you want to
100%.
do.
Yep.
No matter whether you want to do an adventure film, no matter whether it's a true story, they're the fucking Nazis. As Norm Macdonald famously said, I'm going to go on a limb and say, I'm going off these guys. I don't like them very much. So the Nazis are, yeah, pretty fucking horrendous to put it rather understatedly. And one of the films that I think demonstrates war at its most disgusting, but also shows off great filmmaking at the same time is 1985's Come and See, which is a Russian film. Pete, I believe you've seen it. Certainly. I think you mentioned it when I suggested it. It's directed by Ellen Klimev, so not a director who would go on to, make films in the West or anything, but a renowned filmmaker at home, and stars Alexei Kravchenko, who's the young boy on the cover there. And it's gritty, realistic take on what happened to small villages in Belarus, where over 650 were completely wiped off the map, burnt to the ground, women and children burnt in churches, etc., etc. The worst atrocities possible. And what this film seeks to do is to put a human face to the suffering. So we literally see this child. I mean, he looks such a wretch when you see him there, but that is how he appears in the film. That's not just artistic interpretation. When we see him at first, he's quite excited to join up with the Russian resistance and to go and fight. And, he's heard great tales of heroism, etc. But soon realizes, very soon realizes, that war is just the most disgusting business possible, especially this kind of war against an enemy like the Hitler regime. Um, so he has experiences that are unforgettable, and not unforgettable in oh, Saving Private Ryan's got a wonderful beach scene. Unforgettable in the most horrific ways possible. There are images in this that will stick with you, like a horror film, but it's shot in quite a lot of ways like a horror film, because again, that's the point the director's trying to get over in those scenes in particular, is that, it's not a unique observation that war is literal horror, but when you see scenes of a young girl in one sequence coming out of a bog, and she looks like a zombie. She looks like a Romero zombie, but it's completely intentional to use cinematic language to really get across the horrors of that. And it's not the kind of film you can really spoil. It's not that kind of film where there's shock reveals and whatnot, but there's stunning filmmaking in it where our main character here, towards the end of the film, after everything he's gone through, and please, it's on YouTube. I don't normally advocate, piracy and whatnot, but it is on YouTube, and I think people should see this film. There's a scene towards the end of the film where he sees a picture of Hitler in a puddle, and he takes his rifle and just starts shooting at it. And while he starts doing that, we see Adolf Hitler on screen in 1945, the famous footage of him at the bunker giving the Hitler Youth their medals, the last footage that exists of Hitler. And as he takes every shot, Hitler's life starts to flash before the boy's eyes in reverse. And Hitler becomes younger and younger. So it goes to the start of the war, it goes to the 1933 victory in the elections, it goes to World War One, where Hitler got the cross. It shows you his art school, and then he stops firing as he sees baby Hitler, the image we've all seen of Hitler as a baby. And instead of asking you that stupid question of would you kill Hitler as a baby if you were a time traveler kind of thing that everybody's done, it really does something a bit more grown up and has our child character here say, he was a child once, and look what war has done to Hitler. Look what the First World War did to Hitler. Look what a little taste of hatred did to Hitler. What could life have been like for that child if different things happened in his life? And he realizes that his own life is now going down a completely different path than it would have done. The film was impossible to make for a number of years for the director, who had great difficulties getting it off the ground because it's not a film that glorifies the Soviet resistance. Quite a lot of Soviet films are that because, of course, it was still the Soviet Union and they had propaganda, but it doesn't do that at all. So it shows you that these people still lived in filth and squalor even before they had to worry about Nazis. I mean, Stalin killed more of his own people than Hitler ever did. So, the Russians arguably suffered more than anybody during the war in terms of sheer numbers. The disgusting conditions they had to live in before and after the war are not shied away from in this film. It's just visceral, intense filmmaking that is some of the most powerful imagery you will ever see, with a stunning lead performance. So, probably spent a couple of minutes too long on it, but it's one that I think far too few people will have seen. So please make that your homework. If you like world cinema, if you do enjoy being the wrong word in this case, but a war film, then come and see. Should be near the top of your list, certainly.
Yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. I've only seen it once, and after I got done watching, I was like, "Oof, wow."
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
I didn't know if I'd ever want to watch it again because it's
mm,
that heavy of a film. It really
yeah.
is. If you want to see a brutal war film, that's one of them.
Yeah, it's not a big battle type of film. It's not that
No.
kind of. It's a small bunch of people, both in resistance and in the Nazis. So it's just the effects on a small group of people and what it can do to their humanity,
Yep.
such as it becomes. So I said I would only allow myself one of those kind of depressing films. So to kind of wash the taste out, something a bit more fun and upbeat. Um, Something that might not even occur to you guys as being a war film because it didn't involve uh, your country. The Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France, of course, and Napoleon Bonaparte, giving his name to the war. Master and Commander, far side of the world.
Oh,
This film needs a 4K. This is one of the most stunning looking films you will ever see in your life. I adore the Napoleonic Wars as a topic of history. It's such a different kind of war because so many, even in Britain, were big fans of Napoleon. So it wasn't like Hitler where there was just a general acceptance that, hey, this guy needs to be fought and fought hard. There were a lot of people saying, well, he's bringing down the establishment. Maybe we should, we should be following Bonaparte's example. This film doesn't go into all that stuff. It's set in a later part of the war where he was very much the enemy. But in this country, you have heroes like Nelson and Wellington, who are up there with Churchill, and this is a real celebration of that era. But it uses a very different story, a fictional story based on the novels by Patrick O'Brian, wonderful novels. And it's a real old-fashioned type adventure film that you really don't get from Hollywood anymore. And to be honest, you didn't really get in 2003 when it came out either, which probably is why probably why it didn't do as well as it should have done, because people weren't conditioned to see an old-fashioned type of adventure yarn like this. If this had come out in the 60s and starred Charlton Heston as Captain Jack Aubrey, it would have been a sensation, a box office smash. It would have been Titanic, pardon the pun, but it would have been an absolute behemoth at the box office. As it stands, though, Russell Crowe's fantastic in it. For my money, he's better here than he is in Gladiator, the film he won the Oscar for. His performance as Captain Jack is about almost to give a frame of reference, Captain Kirk-like, where he's a stickler for rules when it needs to be, but he also is very playful and fun, and very much someone who commands respect, but without having to be too brutal with it. He's not Captain Bligh, to use another British naval example. He's not Mutiny on the Bounty type. You have a wonderful supporting cast. Paul Bettany is great here too. But essentially, it's a chase film where he gets his orders that you have to go and take the HMS Surprise and find this French ship, the Acheron, which is terrorizing the tropics and whatnot. So it's a chase film where he has to go and attack the Acheron, but then soon realizes the Acheron is far superior, leading to all sorts of wonderful quotes throughout the film. The lesser of two evils, the enemy has more guns, twice our number, for England, for home, for the prize, all sorts. It's a real quotable film. Um, and when it turns into that more adventure film, when they're chasing them down, then it becomes a retreat film and they have to go and hide out for a while and rebuild and restructure. And then, of course, if we win one, we lose one, then there has to be the, best of three scenario. So for the last act, we get a wonderful sequence where they disguise themselves as fishermen, and let this. I mean, they're called the HMS Surprise. They let the Acheron come in and then surprise them with a wonderful blistering attack on close quarters. It's massively historically accurate. A friend of mine, Tony, is a lecturer at Glasgow University. And he reckons for a Hollywood production, this is about as accurate as it's ever been in Hollywood, certainly compared to, films by Mel Gibson and the like, where history is always second to the storytelling, which, hey, that's fine. But, I think this is just a brilliant blockbuster film, completely overshadowed that year by something like Return of the King. And if I remember right, 2003, Pirates of the Caribbean was that year as well, the first one. So for people wanting a seafaring adventure film, they probably went for Pirates instead. Yeah, this is 100 times the film that will ever be, and it's dated. Absolutely not a jot. It's just perfect, perfect, perfect filmmaking. Directed by the great Peter Weir, the Australian director.
And you're right, that's in need of a 4K because if I remember correctly, that Blu-ray came out a long time ago, right? That's
Yeah, it's one of those really old Blu-rays, yeah, where it's, maximum high def experience. And, the trailers in it are for films like Hitch and things from 2007, so it's like that first batch of Blu-rays.
I got it on a
Um,
double feature with Castaway.
oh, there you go. Yep, yep.
what what an odd double bill.
It was fun.
Well, they both have a soccer ball, don't they?
No. Okay. Um, so number three for me then. I wanted to pick one that's very much a British classic in the mold of Zulu or The Great Escape or Ice Cold and Alex films that are shown all the time in the UK as a kind of rousing bank holiday spectacle. And for me, there's none better at that type of thing than The Dam Busters from 1955 in one of Studio Canal's rather oversized but wonderful box sets. A total classic again, which I think the thing I like most about this film is that it has two films in one, really, but neither of them's too padded out, so it doesn't feel like it's going on for too long. The first half is so for anyone, I don't think it's as big a film in America, certainly, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, the basic premise is the Britons realise that their bombing of dams across the Netherlands and Belgium will help cripple Nazi production, but that just bombing with Lancasters and the like isn't effective. You're just kind of chipping away the top layer, whereas you need to kind of get under the dam and get the damage done at the root to really cause all the damage. How do you do that? How do you drop from above? You need to create some kind of bouncing thing, like a pebble going along a lake. So Barnes Wallace, played by Michael Redgrave, who is star of one of the greatest horror films of all time, of who I've twice tried to get into the Hall of Fame now, Dead of Night. He is Barnes Wallace, who is the inventor of the bouncing bomb, as it famously became known. And the first half of the film is a real, if you like, those kind of boffins trying to come up with an idea and how they can perfect it, and they're having to cut through all the red tape, and no one believes them, and they think they're an old crackpot, and blah blah blah. It's a brilliant first half of the film for that kind of thing, where he does believe that he can do it. All the science is telling him he can do it, but he just can't get it right, and it's frustrating, and you'll get, oh come on, it's nearly there, it's nearly there. But of course time's not on his side because there's a war on, and if he can't get it right soon enough, the whole project's going to be cancelled. Of course he does get it right, and the second half of the film completely changes to the point that he's hardly in the second half of the film, so the star of the film kind of leaves, and it becomes the story of the actual bombing itself, the attacks on the dams. So at this part of the film, it's led by Richard Todd, who was one of the stars of, again for a horror connection, Tales from the Crypt, the movie from 1972 from Amicus. Chopped his wife up, and then the parts came to life and started attacking him. Kind of thing happens in an Amicus movie. But he's Guy Gibson, a legendary airman of World War II, and he's the leader of this campaign to get the bouncing bombs and fire them onto the dams. If you watch it and you don't think of the trench run in Star Wars, I'd be amazed because George Lucas has quite openly said he copied this for the trench run to the point where whole lines of dialogue are copied about how many guns are firing at them. Princess Leia's hair, the secretary of Barnes Wallace has the same haircut, exactly the same. The big bun things that she's got, it's quite remarkable. Where so every attack comes in individually, and they have to go around a long trench where of course the dam is, so it's two big hills, just the same as like the Death Star trench has got the metallic thing on each side. They have to go down the long river, and then they have to drop the bomb down, but perfectly, so it goes straight into this exact perfect womp rat sized hole, right? So exactly the same as Star Wars. There's really no difference. You can almost hear Alec Guinness use the Force. Look, it's uncanny how much George Lucas borrowed for the trench run. It's quite sensational. However, that doesn't stop it from being a wonderful, entertaining piece in its own right, with a wonderful, iconic score, which gets played by the England football team to this day, 70 years on. Just a remarkable piece of filmmaking for the time. Has it dated? Yeah, probably quite a lot. A lot of the gunshots and whatnot are from the turrets are being painted onto the individual cells and whatnot. But that's part of the charm of old school filmmaking. I like that kind of thing. So yeah, it's an absolute epic for the time, but it's not a big epic in terms of runtime. But it gives you two great kind of mini films inside of one. So the Dam Busters from '55, old school adventures. If you like your Guns of Navarone and you like your Ice Cold and Alex, then it's highly, highly, highly recommended. So
Which
with that,
version,
gentlemen,
Davey? Which version is that you have?
Studio Canal 5 discer.
Five disc. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at a Australian import here on Amazon. Just
Yeah. So it's yeah, one of those jobbies where you get all sorts of different aspect versions, ratios and whatnot. So
cool.
yeah,
I've never
with
seen that. I'd like to check that out.
yeah, it's a brilliant World War II film, just old school proper entertainment, which again, only 10 years after the war. Richard Todd, the star of it as Guy Gibson, served in the war. It's quite remarkable how many of these guys that made war movies, they were POWs and they were soldiers themselves. Donald Pleasance was in The Great Escape. He was in a prison camp in the war. It's quite what must that have been like to make films, making entertainment of your own suffering, knowing that you lost people and whatnot, literally beside you in those camps at the time. Unreal.
Cool.
But with that, gentlemen, I'll bid
Good
you
stuff.
adieu. I'm dropping off early this evening, so
And happy birthday, Davey. If
thank you,
you get some
thank
sleep
you,
and enjoy your day tomorrow.
thank you very much. I'll see you with my toys next month.
Here we go. Toys next month. I'll talk about that at the end of the episode. People are like, toys, what are you talking about? Happy
All
birthday,
right,
my friend.
guys,
Take
have a
care.
good one.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, Craig, moving over to you.
Okay, my three choices that I have, and I inadvertently made choices from three different decades without even knowing
There
it.
you
So,
go.
my first choice is was the oldest that I had chosen, and it is from no, open from 1958. Run
Just
Silent,
watched that like 2 weeks ago. Good.
and with starring two giants of the time, Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster, directed by Robert Wise. Tells the story of Gable being a naval submarine commander whose submarine was sunk right at the beginning of the movie by a Japanese destroyer called the Akakazi, and he survives along with some members of his crew. And for the next 2 years at Pearl Harbor, he's kind of planning his revenge on how to. He needs a command first, but to sink this dreaded destroyer that has gone on to sink several other American submarines in a particular area called the Bungo Straits, I believe. So enter Burt Lancaster, who is the uh, executive officer of a submarine and is pretty much this far away from getting to be commander of the submarine when lo and behold, Clark Gable swoops in and takes the command from him of that vessel. So they head out on a mission, and on the way, uh, Gable is giving them lots of drills that some of the crew find questionable of tactics that he's trying. You get to hear Clark Gable say about 100 times in the movie, "Dive, dive," and, with the drills that they're doing, um, and they receive explicit commands not to go into this particular straits uh, to go against the Akakazi or anything else that's there. Clark Gable defies orders and goes there anyway. So it's sort of a it kind of turns into like a Moby Dick almost kind of movie where he's just wants to sink this vessel no matter what. You also have the clash of the two main actors where the crew is generally loyal to Burt Lancaster, and is questioning the commands of Gable. So just a wonderful movie that has a lot of claustrophobic parts in it because it's mostly takes place inside the submarine. There's some I do wish that this was in color because of with some of the underwater scenes that quick scenes that they have of torpedoes going by and of the boats. But as it is, it's a great uh, actually, and a quick movie too, just a little over an hour and a half of some tense World War II drama and being of being silent and just all sorts of warfare that of trying to defeat your enemy using whatever tactics that you can with it. So it, Iron Maiden even named a song after this, even though it's on one of their bad albums. But it's so it has to be a classic. So Run Silent, Run Deep. Also features supporting turns from Jack Warden, just coming off of 12 Angry Men, and the film debut of Mr. Warmth himself, Don Rickles, one of my favorite comedians, as one of the naval officers aboard this submarine. So yeah, check this out. This is streaming in most of the normal places, but it's a just a good tense but very watchable war movie. Run Silent, Run Deep. So, where the heck is my? Oh boy, I don't know if I lost my. Uh-oh. Where do I get? Oh no.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
Yeah, exactly. My next one, if yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna get out of this because it's
Yeah, sometimes you got to get out of the app, refresh it, and go back in.
That's why I use the TV.
there we go. My next from 1986, Heartbreak Ridge, directed by Clint Eastwood, starring Clint Eastwood. This has at least a little bit of nostalgia for me. This was again one of the first movies that I rented on videotape upon getting a VCR as a teen. Clint Eastwood plays Gunnery Sergeant Thomas Highway, a name that is just built for cinema, as a Marine on his sort of last leg and given his last chance where he gets to be a sort of drill instructor to a reconnaissance platoon at Fort Bragg. So not really a twist, but the men that he's whipping into shape, so to speak, are already Marines. They're not high school kids, so to speak, but they are, as they say in the movie, less than motivated. So another eminently quotable movie with the Marines are looking for a few good men. Unfortunately, you ain't it. So, and with lots of different antics that go on, which would be quite illegal, of course. It is a movie. The main villain in the movie is played by Everett McGill, coming right off of Silver Bullet from the year before as as Major Malcolm Powers, the nemesis in this movie. It also has a little bit of ageism in this movie where Clint's character is in reality he was maybe only 55 or so when he made this movie, but they established that he had served in Korea and Vietnam, had been in the military for 30 some odd years and was close to mandatory retirement. And he's viewed as a bit of a dinosaur and as someone who is not quite up to snuff. And the major, who is his superior officer, is someone who obviously outranks him, but also doesn't have practical experience. He's an Annapolis graduate and has never served in combat before. So there's some parallels to the real world almost, where you're I'm sure there's lots of us that have had times where someone is promoted over you that doesn't necessarily have practical experience, but they may have just kissed the right ass on the way or something. But the movie culminates at the end. The movie is made in 1986, but it doesn't tell you what year that the movie really is taking place. The war, if you want to call it that, or actually sort of a minor skirmish at the end of the movie, is with the invasion of the island Grenada, which actually happened in 1983. So the finally get to go take the Marines to war in this, even though it's a relatively a quick war, but they still get to put their skills to use that Clint had taught them, and everything works out quite a bit in the end. There's supporting turns also in this from Mario Van Peebles, who's very funny as one of the platoon members. Marcia Mason plays his ex-wife. Bo Svensson plays another villain of sorts in the movie, although he doesn't get quite enough to do. But just a really just an engaging, fun bit of a war movie with Clint at his grizzled finest. And he I don't know if his voice has ever been more, barbed wire sounding in any movie that he has, of course, by design. But there are so many funny lines in this that you'll immediately cop to memory as soon as you hear them, if you have not seen this movie already, Heartbreak Ridge from 1986.
Who's at his cantankerous, curmudgeonly best in that film. It's just,
Yeah,
everything that comes out of his mouth is awesome.
yeah, yeah. Get that contraband stogie out of my face before I stick it so far up your ass you'll have to set fire to your nose to light it. Just all kinds of great stuff. It's a good one from sort of Clint's forgotten period in the mid '80s or so. My last movie is one that I remember watching for the first time just on a whim when I was maybe 18 or 19, and I had always heard about it, and I thought, what the heck, I'll just give it a try. And I was magnetized while I was watching this, just riveted with watching it. And it's one of those movies where it's really long, but you kind of don't care once you're watching it. And that is 1970's Patton, starring George C. Scott. This won all sorts of Oscars that year: Best Picture, Best Actor, screenplay for original screenplay by a young Francis Ford Coppola. Also, I believe for editing and sound. Uh, George C. Scott plays the titular Patton in this during World War II, taking command uh, in Europe during World War II, and he just a great performance of like I said, a long movie, but you don't really quite feel it once you're watching it. And what other things that are good about this is that it doesn't show just all the good stuff with Patton. It shows that he was a sort of complicated person, and with slapping a soldier, or with being a prima donna and one being sort of a glory hound. But in the end, his soldiers loved him, and he was a brilliant tactician. I mean, and again, just wonderful quotable lines where he's facing Rommel in the desert in North Africa. It's like, you magnificent bastard, I read your book. Where he takes out Rommel, and just a extremely engaging movie. And again, and the score with the horns that you hear basically throughout the movie just keeps you riveted and interested, and just a great World War II movie. And that's Patton.
Didn't he refuse the Oscar, or didn't accept it, or
Yeah,
Yeah,
did.
I believe his reasons was that he didn't want to be singled out for
yeah?
his performance or something like that against all of the other fellow actors. I mean, other than Carl Malden, I'm not sure if there were terribly a lot of well-known people in it, but his performance is, very much stands out over everyone else's. Although Carl Malden is very good too, as General Omar Bradley, who was actually alive when they made this movie, and I believe served as a technical advisor.
And George C. Scott revised the character again in a TV movie called The Death of Patton. Because his death was always shrouded in mystery. They weren't sure if it was an accident or he was murdered.
Yeah, hit by a car, or which may or may not have been an accident.
Right.
Well, it kind of became his definitive role, pretty much, right? For the most part.
Yeah, after
Any great
Doctor
one.
Strangelove and then Patton I mean he obviously other lots of other movies too, but yeah, it's always usually the one that you usually think about when you think of him, and for good reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
After I started playing like really crazy characters, like in Hardcore or Rage and all
Well,
these
I was
over
going
the
to say
top.
the Indian and Firestarter.
Right, exactly. He just started just going off.
All right, Chris, over to you.
All right, this was an interesting topic because when I was a kid, I loved watching war movies, specifically World War II movies, with my dad. Um, One of our favorites was Patton, and another one was 1961's Guns of Navarone. And as a kid, I know we will talk toys in the future. One of my favorite childhood toys, which I rebought later on, was the 1970s, which I think actually started in the 60s, the Marx playset
Yeah.
of the Guns of Navarone, the mountain with the guns, which came with World War II German soldiers and the invading American troops. And I played with that all the time. So Navarone was an island that I talked about constantly as a child. And I was super excited when 1978's Force 10 from Navarone came out. This is the Blu-ray. This is the British Blu-ray from Indicator Films, which is the extended cut. I wanted to see this so bad in the theater as a kid, but didn't. But it was apparently a huge bomb for some reason. Although when I rewatched the movie, I'm like, yeah, I guess it doesn't quite hold up. But the fucking cast is like a 70s all-star. I mean, Harrison Ford from Star Wars, Robert Shaw from Jaws, Barbara Bach and Richard Kiel from the fucking James Bond franchise, and Carl Weathers from Rocky. Like literally all you were missing was somebody from the Godfather movies.
Pretty much.
And yeah, it's a World War II movie. It's sort of an adventure film. It is a sequel to 1961's Guns of Navarone. It's basically the two characters from that movie survive and then now have to blow up a bridge. They team up with Harrison Ford to go elsewhere to blow up a bridge, and it's okay. I still enjoy it because it's a fun movie and it's got a great fucking cast. But it also kind of reminds me of like some 70s blaxploitation films where to kill time, it's like, oh, we got to go from here to there. And then we watch the characters go over there. And then what happens? Well, when they get there, oh, no, we got to go back to where we were. And there's a lot of that in this to fill up time. But it's still fun. I still enjoy it. And yeah, that's Force 10 from Navarone.
It's never a good idea when they do a sequel to a film and the sequel comes out like almost 20 years later.
The crazy thing when I was there's two versions of this import disc. This one was like really cheap, and there's a ton of extras. The other version was like a multi-disc with way more extras. I'm like, how could there be this much extras on this movie? Anyway, I was reading about it on Wikipedia even, and they were like, the original idea was to bring back Gregory Peck and David Niven, and I'm like, holy fuck, they would be ancient. I'm like, World War II ended in 1945. I'm like, so that obviously they recast them, but yeah, not a great idea, but it's worth checking out if you like those. All those actors from the 70s. This movie,
Shaw's last movie too.
yes, yeah. Although he finished this one, right? There was another movie he made after this.
Avalanche Express.
Yes, and I was going to say, didn't he pass while he was making that one, right, Dan?
Or shortly thereafter.
Okay,
One
yeah,
or the other.
Yes, he died in 78.
yeah.
And that came out in 79.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Robert Shaw passed away before it was released. And yeah, I remember being a kid. You guys know because we're all old. Davey's fucking young. Like this came out, I think it was Christmas of '78, and it was a bomb. So they quickly sold the TV rights, and I think by 1979, this was on regular TV.
And on cable. It was one of the earlier cable.
Right, yeah. So they, because they lost a ton of money, so they had to get their money back. But I remember being a kid being like, you guys know, if you didn't see a fucking movie in the theater,
You have to
No,
wait.
you might have to wait like 3-4 years. This was like 6 months later. It was on Channel 4. It was like, holy shit. Okay, my next one. I actually did see this. This was my favorite drive-in experience as a child. In May of 1981, my father took me and my sister to the Warwick Drive-In in Warwick, New York, for a triple feature. The first movie was Friday the 13th, Part 2. The middle movie, which was the brand new movie at the time, the middle movie was My Bloody Valentine, which was like maybe 3 months old, I guess. And then the final movie, which my father and my sister completely slept through, I had to wake them up when it was over, was a semi-World War II movie from 1980 called The Final Countdown.
Charlton Heston.
Yeah. Well, Kirk Douglas,
Right.
Martin Sheen, Ron O'Neill, James Farentino, Lloyd Kaufman from Troma, Charles Durning. I mean, it's a huge cast, and it's a really interesting. It kind of reminded me of Top Gun. I hadn't seen it in a long time. I think it still really holds up, and for those who haven't seen it, it just jumps right into it. It's the USS Nimitz, which is a modern day aircraft carrier, is in the Pacific, and they go through, and what I loved about it, they really didn't fucking explain it. They go through a black hole in 1980, and they come out December 6th, 1941 in the Pacific, which is, for those that know history, that's the day before the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And, it's very sci-fi-ish because it poses the question, okay, we're here, but do we do anything? Because anything we do is going to alter history. And it's pretty intense. It was, I remember being as a kid, I know nothing about it other than that it was a war movie, and I really enjoyed seeing it at the drive-in. And it's fun. It still really holds up. It's got a lot of great footage of the aircraft carrier and tons of amazing footage, considering it's 1980 of all the fighter jets. The ending still kind of bums me out. I'm not going to give it away for those who haven't seen it, but definitely worth checking out. 1980s, The Final Countdown.
Jamie, were you just looking in your ratings book to see what you gave that when you saw it?
I looked because I was like, I've been wanting to see that movie for a long time. Did I eventually see it? And I saw
I
it.
don't think I've ever seen it.
I've never seen it, but I've
It's
always
really
loved
worth
to have
watching.
time travel.
It's really good because it's like Chris said, they go through like let's do the time warp again.
Like a black
and
hole.
And then all of a sudden they kind of see some Japanese prop planes, flying around. They're like, what the hell's going on? What?
Yeah, they're hearing like old. They put on the radio.
Yeah, and it's
And they're
like big band.
they're
It's like
playing
Glenn
old
Miller
fights with
and-
like Jack Dempsey, and they're like, "What the fuck is going on?" I don't want to give too much away, but it's worth checking out, Pete. We'll I would talk to you about it afterwards. But yeah, the 4K. I will say this: the 4K looked really good, but holy shit, for a movie that's 45 years old, the sound was incredible.
Really?
I mean, the jets and the planes flying around, I was like, holy shit, it sounded amazing. And again, as somebody who saw it in the drive-in, back then it was the fucking speaker in the window.
Not even the radio.
Yeah, I don't even think it was on the radio,
Yeah, it was
Jamie. I think it was
speaker.
just the
That's
fucking
flip
speaker
on
that
your-
you put on the window.
Yeah.
And drive
And
away with it.
It is quite a different experience to watch it at home. And I'll never forget having to wake my dad and my sister up to have one of them drive. 'Cause I was fucking 10 years old. I was like, wake up, somebody take me home. But yeah,
Can you just
a
say
fun
what a
one.
weird triple bill that was? Those other two films and that.
Right? Makes no sense. But it does, Pete, it still happens once in a while where there's a weird, my missus still brings up all the time. She used to go to the drive-in all the time by us, but of course she's a couple years older than me. Her favorite one as a kid was, and I don't remember which movie came first, was probably the Muppet movie, but it was the Muppet movie and Purple Rain with Prince.
Well, that's 5-year difference. 79,
But I don't think it was the first one. I think it
84.
was.
Oh,
I
the
think it was
Muppets
one.
Take Manhattan.
I think it was one of the Muppet sequels, and
Oh.
and Purple Rain.
Still, that's just
But
bizarre.
still, that's fucking weird.
Well, it's
So-
funny, like Grindhouse before it became associated with like sleazy action and so forth, like in the 70s, the original term Grindhouse, where people had theaters and they would put like bizarre triple features on. This is like the 50s and 60s. So you'd have a musical and then a Western, and then you'd have something else on there, but then it eventually became Grindhouse as we know in Times Square and stuff like that. But yes, that's like a weird triple bill.
yeah.
I mean, as a kid growing up, I think when I went to the drive-in, there was a movie made in the 50s. I swear every time we went, it was on the bill. It was called Basketball Fix, and it was about like corruption in high school basketball. And I must have seen that 7 times over the course of
Wow.
just here's Basketball Fix.
Yeah, one of the ones I remember seeing was Smokey and the Bandit, and then the second movie was Roller Coaster, which was like
Wow.
which was a different one to throw on there for your B movie.
That's funny. Yeah, we could probably do a whole episode on
Drive-in.
drive-in double
Drive-in
features
stories.
from back
Oh,
then.
Yep. Yep.
Funny
Or
shit.
disaster movies for that matter.
Yeah, that's true too. All right, my last movie was certainly my favorite rewatches of these three. I had it on DVD and Blu-ray, but I bought this. This is the Steelbook, which has the. This was on sale actually. The Steelbook. It was cheaper than the regular edition. Probably because I think this could be the single worst artwork I think I've ever seen on a Steelbook, and the most misrepresentation of a film I've ever seen. But of course, I'm not a fucking collector for the sleeves and shit. So it was 1984's Red Dawn, and I'm like, what the fuck? Were you trying to sell this as the Breakfast Club?
That's it.
Like,
The
this
outside
is
or the outsiders. Yeah.
This is the
Friends
worst.
photo.
It's awful. But I think the movie is unbelievable. I mean, I always liked it. This is my third or fourth time buying it. But I told Craig, when I rewatched it by myself in the garage the other day, and I was okay. Maybe I was a little, my birthday was coming up, so maybe I was a little sensitive. Maybe I was a little high on cough medicine too. But like, I couldn't believe how good of a movie it was, and I also couldn't believe like 4 fucking times, like I welled up with tears while watching this movie. I'm like, it was so gritty and so intense. I mean, I always liked it, but I was like, Jesus Christ, this is one of the greatest movies. Of course, directed by John Milius, who I love, who directed Conan the Barbarian, my favorite film. And John Milius had Basil Polidorus, did the score for Conan, did the great score for Red Dawn. The young cast is great with Patrick Swayze and Charlie Sheen and C. Thomas Howell, but holy shit, the veterans in this. I mean, Ben Johnson, Harry Dean Stanton, Ron O'Neal, William Smith, Powers Booth. I mean, fucking legends. And, Craig and I talked apart with a quick scene with Harry Dean Stanton when he's all beat up and he's talking to his sons and they're all crying. I'm like, holy shit, I'm sitting in my garage watching this movie. And I've seen this movie 100 times, but it had me welling up with tears. I'm like, this is fucking insane.
Look at
And
Chris
it's,
Howell getting all sensitive on us in his
Oh,
own.
it's true.
Oh,
That
look at
fucking that cough medicine, man, it really knocked me for a loop. But it
Blame it on
really
the cough
was.
medicine, sure.
It really was something, though. It is very dark, very gritty. I think it really handled the whole war aspect well, in that it's really doesn't make it sexy or glamorizes it, and all the fucking cast is
It's
dead
not a
by the
place
end.
for kids. It's not a place for kids, man.
No, really, really not. So yeah, I think, and it was interesting too. It's got Ron O'Neal and Charlie Sheen. Well, Ron O'Neal starred with Martin Sheen in the Final Countdown. So I'm like, wow, that's funny. I didn't even pick up that connection until I watched them back to back. But yeah, I think it's just one of those few movies that really, truly held up, and I was just surprised at how much I still really enjoyed it. And yeah, that's my.
And
those are my
William
choices.
Smith, who plays the commander,
Yes, the
he
Russian
spoke
commander.
he spoke fluent Russian.
And
He-
Dan, that's an excellent point. While watching this, it's Russian and Cuban and Nicaraguan troops, and they're all speaking their native languages, which is fucking great because, you guys know, and how many, war movies, every German or Japanese soldier is speaking perfect English. So, it added to the realism, which I'm sure, John Milius, I'm sure, was pushing for. But yeah, really shocked at how well it held up.
And
Do
that's
you
for
remember? Do you remember the big deal of that movie when it came out?
If I remember right, that it was the first PG-13 movie.
Yep.
Oh, it was okay.
And Jamie, I was thinking that while watching it, and I was like, it's so intense. You can almost see it getting the R. I guess obviously they wanted the PG-13 to get the kids to come into it, and it made a lot of money, so I guess that worked.
Especially once you get the snow involved in it, because then you see the blood and
Yes.
guy hanging off of the tank gun,
Totally.
and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you watch the remake, Chris?
And that's an excellent question, Dan. I told Craig I bought it at a flea market one year for $1 on Blu-ray, and I watched it and immediately put it back on the shelf. I did not think much of it. I wanted to rewatch the remake for this episode, but I told Craig I know I have it, but I couldn't find it.
You were emotionally spent with the cough syrup and the original version. You really didn't want to.
I remember not liking it, but it's been so long, like I can't remember what I didn't like about it.
I haven't seen it.
That Avenge Me Boys scene at the drive-in with Harry Dean Stanton. I said to Chris, I said, he knocks it out of the park in 3 minutes.
Oh yeah. Oh, just unbelievable.
He's
And
in
Red
the movie
Dawn.
in like 3 minutes, and it's like, well done, sir.
And Red Dawn, that was a regular rotation on early cable.
Oh,
Version.
absolutely, yeah.
That
It was a huge
PBS
movie on
showed up.
VHS. One of these ones that I'm pretty sure we did this episode too. Like movies that you regret not seeing in the theater, and I didn't go to see this in the theater for some reason, and I'm like, holy shit, that was a mistake. I totally should have totally seen that.
And I tell you, I'm looking at because they have the steel book and they have the regular 4K regular case.
Right.
Yeah, I'm looking at a crystal clear picture of the steel book. Yeah, that's who
It's terrible.
that's awful. That's
But
It's like,
again,
it looks
Pete,
like
this was
it looks like The Outsiders.
yeah,
Like,
this was $20 on Amazon, and the regular edition was like 28.
yeah, it's
And I'm like, well,
2706 to be exact right
I'm
now.
like, I'll save the $8. I'll get the shitty cover because it's just going on a fucking shelf anyway.
that's one of those Shout Factory ones. They're half off for the next.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now there's a sale on the Shout Factory. I ordered this like a couple weeks ago, but yeah. Other than the disc cover, yeah, and this is another one too. The sound looked pretty good. It's from the '80s. It's dark. It's got some grit. But man, the sound was unfucking believable. I had the wall shaking in my my movie room there.
Cool. I gotta get that.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it in way too long. So
it held up for sure.
cool. That's good to know. I'm glad you brought that up. All right, Dan, over to you.
Oh, me. Okay, yeah, all right. All right, let's see. Well, once again, I picked films from 3 different eras, and one in particular from the 1940s. And 2 are kind of downbeat, and then there's one that's kind of upbeat in its own way. But I'll start out with the Vietnam War has been covered many times in film. Starting in the 60s, they touched upon it, and John Wayne made the Green Berets, which was unfortunately very much of a 1940s sentimentality about the war, about a propaganda type thing. And by that time, the war was starting to sour and go south. So it was a bomb at the box office. It is entertaining to watch because you get to see Mr. Sulu, George Takei, playing a Vietnamese scout in the film, among other things. Came about in the 70s, but in other films such as in some of the Spartans with Burt Lancaster, which was the early days of Vietnam. And then by 1985, Oliver Stone kind of nails it with Platoon. Basic gist, the film, we're talking about 6 months maximum in a young guy's life who goes to Vietnam, being drafted and going in there and encountering all the characters that you see in a platoon and how the platoon functions. it's not cliched, but you had characters that would meet in situations like that that came from all over the country, all over the world. You'd meet people that had never, from Maine, that had never seen a black person in person until they went into the military. You all walks of life, all different backgrounds. You get stuck in a situation to survive. And what happens in this film? It's just a story of this platoon as it goes along. The way they are just, it just they're just dragged down. They're beaten down. The war is not what they're been sold a bill of goods on. Um, it's about his observations and coming in there, and he comes in there kind of with his uniform, and as soon as he gets in, he meets Elias, played by William Defoe, who's like a spiritual type of hippie type of guy in the film in the group. Then there's Tom Berenger, who's like the world weary, pretty similar to Tom Sizemore in Saving Private Ryan, who's just probably doing his second or third tour of Vietnam. People I knew that they ended up came back to the world, they used to call the United States. And what would happen is they couldn't handle it here and they went back and did another tour because they had to go back. They couldn't handle reality
Those two
anymore.
guys steal the film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're like at each other the whole
Yeah.
time. Great.
And it's a great cast across the
Yeah.
board. I mean, it's you've got people like Keith David from The Thing, Tony Todd in an earlier role,
Right.
Kevin Dillon, Matt Dillon's brother,
Johnny Depp too, I think, right?
what's that?
Johnny Depp, I think's in that. Right?
Johnny Depp has a small role in it. It goes on and on. A veritable who's who of stars in the '80s at this point, and even including Corey Glover,
That's
the
right.
lead singer from Living Color. It's just
Newburgh, New York. That's right. Yeah.
Yep. Downbeat. It just, they come in fresh, not really freshly scrubbed, but within 6 months, he's going home after being wounded a second time. And that's it. It's over. You can't make it any more realistic in this film. Oliver Stone, who was in Vietnam for 2 tours, he wanted to give it as much authenticity as he could. There's only two parts in the film that are kind of like really weird. There's one cliched part when Charlie Sheen goes out into the field on their first night hike, night platoon. There's a big overweight type of guy who's like, showing a picture of his girlfriend back home. He might as well have been wearing a red shirt in Star Trek, because that's it. He's toast. He's done. And the only thing in it that is not realistic is there's a scene where Kevin Dillon um, shoots a beer, and he puts the can on his head and crushes it. Well, that didn't happen in the '60s because cans were made out of steel. So he would have probably encased it into his skull by trying to do that, or knocked himself out. But a great film overall. It just downbeat. It kind of captures the entire Vietnam War experience in this one film. It won 4 Academy Awards. It was up for 8. And it really, I like to say this is the film that put Tom Berenger into the big star bracket. All of them. Everybody's careers launched after this in many respects. And like I said, it's great to see Tony Todd in an earlier role, playing a member of the platoon. Second film. It's been done 3 times in films. In 1930 in the United States, directed by Louis Milestone. It was done as a 1979 TV movie starring Richard Thomas from The Waltons
Yep.
and Ernest Borgnine. But in 2022, they finally made a German version of this film, or the book, that was written in Germany. Okay, and they made a German version, and that is All Quiet on the Western Front. This film, you've got, once again, it's a story of 4 young schoolmates that, when the beginning of the film, they're in school, and it's from 1917. It's about 6 months, once again, before the war is over. And they're trying to give rah-rah speeches to get these guys in schools to go out and join the military. They all join. They look like they're getting ready to, when you first see them, it looks like they're getting ready to get on a train to go to Hogwarts. That's how freshly scrubbed they look. Within 6 months, they look like they've just been released from a concentration camp. They are sallow. They are beaten down. The fighting is just brutal in this film. It's the brutality of war. It is the loss. 1 minute you're there, 1 minute you're not. Tanks run over people. It's very much like in the first film that Davey said. It is a brutal conflict. You have to realize in this First World War, it was the first war of really first time mechanized warfare with tanks and trucks. But if you go to any museum about the First World War, they literally had tools that look like they're from the Spanish weapons, just wrenches. They were just, it was brutal, especially in the trenches. They would just beat the living shit out of each other, you know. But by the end of this film, the four people eventually, not to give too much away, people eventually die during the story. Each one is a different scenario. And there's one thing that travels with them the whole time. In the beginning of the film, one of the guys hooks up with a French farm girl, and for a night, and he has a handkerchief from her that smells of her perfume, and these guys pass it off to each other as they go along or they pass away. They grab it and take it away. I'm not going to give too much away about this film, but it follows the book. Eric Marie Remarque, who wrote it, was a World War I veteran, who, ironically, in a family story with my father-in-law's mother and father had a restaurant in Central Park South called Greta's Viennese, and it was a German restaurant. They came from Germany. They were Jews. And they came from Germany and opened a restaurant on Central Park South and served Viennese cuisine. Anybody and everybody, it was German or Viennese, went there. Paul Muni was a weekly guest there while he was doing Key Largo on Broadway in 1939. And one person that was also a guest all the time was the writer of All Quiet on the Western Front, Eric Marie Remarque. And he would come there, and my father-in-law, his mother would say, take a walk with Eric in the park. And this Eric Remarque was extremely quiet man. He was scarred by the war, and he would walk through Central Park and just enjoy the silence and wouldn't say a word. And my father-in-law would have to escort him through the park and come back. We have a guest book from the museum from the restaurant where it's autographed by him as well, and so forth. But that was the association with that. Great film, highly recommended. I advise you see the American version from 1930. It's a different approach, slightly, but it does follow the storyline. It's about the disillusionment of war, and 1 minute's peace, the next minute you could be dead. The final film I have is a little bit more upbeat, and it's really not a war film. It's a romance, but it takes place in World War II, and it's been considered one of the greatest films in the top 100, probably in the top 20 films of all time. It's a film that, although he had established his bones at Warner Brothers, became a star with High Sierra and Maltese Falcon, he became a superstar when he made this film, and that's Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. Casablanca is, the thing about Casablanca, it is basically a story about Rick, who was a kind of a fugitive from the United States. He can't go back there. He got into gun running, and he finds out himself eventually opening up a cafe, Rick's American, in Casablanca, which becomes a bus terminal of some sorts or a safe haven for refugees from Germany, from Morocco, from even as far away as China. And they go there. There's a lot of seedy underpinnings. There's selling of tickets, getting people out of the country, so forth and so on. All of a sudden, one day, a gentleman by the name of Victor Laszlo is coming in, who is a freedom fighter from Europe, who's highly sought by the Nazis. But Casablanca is kind of a neutral area. It's a DMZ where no one really goes after anybody, but there's a lot of horrible shit going on. But into this whole thing, Victor Laszlo's girlfriend or wife is played by Ingrid Bergman, Ilsa, and she in turn was Rick's ex-lover from Paris or France about a year or so before the war happened. They hooked up because she thought that her husband, Victor Laszlo, played by Paul Henry, had died, but he did not die. So they show up there, and he is pretty much torn. He's still in love with her. She's in love with Rick. But he has to say, as he says in the film, our life, my problems amount to a hill of beans on this place. He goes, Victor Laszlo has a much bigger mission. Great film, well paced. It's got all the cast returning from Maltese Falcon and Sidney Greenstreet is in it. Peter Lorre, Claude Rains, who steals the show as the gendarme or the head of the police department, who's as corrupt, and he's more like a comic relief. He's just that funny about his hypocrisies. And then finally, Conrad Veidt, who played Jafar in The Thief of Baghdad, plays Major Strasser. And just a classic film. Most of the people in the motion picture are all refugees from Germany. They were actors that came to Hollywood, and they have small bit parts. They were all knew each other. There was a very strong German community in Hollywood from all expatriate people that left Germany, of which, as I said earlier, my grandfather-in-law and grandmother-in-law, after closing Greta's Viennese, went to California. He was a director in Germany. He was a stage director. She was an actress. They came to New York next. Then they went to Hollywood because they were going to open a Greta's Viennese in Hollywood. That plan fell through. And in turn, my grandfather-in-law, Felix Bash, you could look him up on IMDb, ended up making about 25 films playing the people he escaped. He played Nazis and bad guys in motion pictures. And Conrad Veidt was a lifelong friend who they also made films together in the 20s in Germany, who my father-in-law would refer to as Uncle Connie. And that's just a little bit of trivia thrown in there. But great film, a classic. If you're going to watch any classic film, that's probably in the top 10 to see it. And once again, made Bogart a star. So that's it, Casablanca.
Yeah, it's a great film. Great film. All right, Jamie.
All right. After 9 o'clock. With the new Laszlo, that's late. Might as well be after midnight for me these days.
Turn into a pumpkin over there.
I know.
We take a nap in the middle of the day now. That sucks.
Yeah, I don't do that.
Oof.
Not yet, anyways. My first, well, I got three movies from that would take place in three different eras. So let's go way, way back from my first one, a movie most people have seen, a movie most people like. That is Braveheart. So this is one of those movies that, back when I used to channel surf, and I was just thinking about this recently. I don't know when it happened, but my last day of channel surfing has happened. I will never channel surf in a traditional way ever again. Just sitting there with
Remember those days?
cable anymore. I'm not getting cable back. So I guess the new channel surfing is, going around on Netflix and highlighting things to watch. I guess that's channel surfing now. Anyways, this focuses on the First War of Scottish independence. And it's not historically accurate at all, I don't think, but I don't give a shit because I just enjoy the movie for the movie. But when I did channel surf, as I was going to say, you came across a movie like Braveheart, you just kind of put the remote down. It's like Jaws or Goodfellas. When you came across that, you put down the remote and you stopped. It's 3 hours long. It takes its time to tell a story, but I think it needs to be 3 hours long. It doesn't move too fast. It doesn't move too slow. I think it's the perfect pace. It's a war movie, and they go to war for freedom and political reasons. But I think that in this movie, anyways, it becomes a bit of a revenge movie as well, because it all is sparked by they kill Mel Gibson's wife. So that adds a little flavor to the movie, a little certain edge. It also has times where it feels like, just for a moment, like a sword and sorcery movie, because you got the deformed father living up in the tower or wherever the hell he is, and he's trying to give words of wisdom, and you got the evil king. So it has that fairy tale aspect to it as well. I think the battle scenes set a new standard for a lot of people for these type of battle scenes. Every time you go to see another movie kind of like this, you go, first thing I would think of is, oh, the battle scene is going to be as good as Braveheart. Are they going to try to? And you would see a lot of times these movies would try to, but it just wasn't the same as. I remember holy shit, that guy's leg just got chopped off. Holy crap, I've never seen this much violence in this type of war movie, old school swords movie. The motivation speech, it's iconic for a reason. Fight and you may die. And the way he puts that accent on the word die, everyone remembers that. And the whole they may take away our lives, but they'll never take away our freedom. the way the horse is moving back and forth as he says that, almost to the flow of his sentences. It's just all just perfect, that scene. It's also has one of the most nail biting scenes, I think, in any war movie, where the enemy's coming towards them and they got the spears and they can't lift them until the last second, and it's old. You're like, holy, lift the fucking things. So we've all seen Braveheart, and I think most of us love Braveheart. The 4K is really good, and this was like $9.99 too when I first got it. I don't know what the price would be on it now. My next one is the more recent movie that I think slipped through the cracks for a lot of people. Didn't have the most exciting name or the most exciting poster or anything, but that is Eye in the Sky from 2016. You got Helen Mirren there. You got Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad, and Alan Rickman in his last on-screen appearance. I think he did a voice in a cartoon or animated movie after this. This is intense as fuck. It has you crawling in your seat as you watch this, kind of like The Coffee Table has you crawling the whole time and going like this and going like this. It's a different kind of movie, but it gets you moving the same way and gives you a lot of anxiety. Eye in the Sky refers to there are some terrorists and they are meeting in Kenya in a safe house, and one of the people involved is a British woman, and the British want to bring her back home to stand trial, so they want them alive. Okay, they're all meeting in the house. So the Eye in the Sky, they have these drones that look like bugs or birds, and those are the Eye in the Sky, and they're trying to ID everybody. So they're flying it around, and even flying the drones gets really tense at times. He's trying to fly it, and there's soldiers everywhere that could shoot him if they know what he's doing. And a kid comes up and goes, "What are you doing? Playing a game? Can I play the game?" You're like, "Get the fuck away, dude." But that's not even half of it. Once they ID everybody, they're trying to think of a way to get them out alive. Well, they start putting on bomb vests, like they're going to do a suicide bombing. So now they're thinking, oh my God, they can go to a mall. This has happened right after the mall bombing in Kenya. So, and I'm married to a Kenyan, so it gets close to home. Her home. I've never been there. Anyway, so they're like, God, 80 people can die. We've got to do something. We've got to kill these people. And it becomes a whole conversation over different continents of, can we kill these people? Will you get down? Can we kill these people? Should we kill these people? We got to get clearance. We got to call this guy. This guy said we got to get clearance from higher up. This guy's he's in Japan playing ping pong. This guy's giving this speech. This guy has food poisoning. He's on the shitter. And they finally get the clearance to do it. 3, 2, 1. A little girl sets up a bread. She's selling bread right by the fucking building. Now they're going to kill the girl for sure. They're like, yeah, passersby, if they happen to come by, we really can't help that. But now we're knowingly killing this little girl. We got to get clearance, and the people, and they're thinking. And even when they're thinking and saying a sentence slow, because these people can leave with these bomb jackets at any second, even when they're talking slow, well, I think, say the fucking words, because even the pauses between your words is wasting time. It drives you up a fucking wall watching this movie. The score is great. The pacing on this is great. The acting is great. It will frustrate you as much as it frustrates these characters watching this. You will want to fast forward to the end just to end the agonizing whatever of watching this, and just, how does this end? Let me just fast forward, but don't fast forward. So that I recommend. It's less than 2 hours long, so you can watch a 100-minute movie. This next one, I did a Catino. I pulled a Catino a bit, kind of.
So it's not a war movie at all.
No, it's a war movie. The question is it a movie?
It's a comic book movie.
It's kind of a movie. So MASH was on for 11 seasons. And the last MASH episode they decided to make it a movie event. So it's kind of like a TV movie. They took out the laugh track. There's no laugh track. They made it a bit more serious. The writing is really good. So it was a 2-hour movie disguised as the series finale of MASH, kind of. You can look it up on Wikipedia. It even says that. And when we all watched it live, it felt like a movie, and we kind of thought it was like a movie. So I don't know if you guys ever watched MASH before, but I came on late. I actually came on. I was one of those kids. I think there's a lot of kids that always said, "Oh, my parents watched MASH and I hated it." I was one of those kids until about 82, 83, I came around. So I was watching the last season, and then I watched the last episode. And I remember watching this. And it opens like where people didn't. This still is the most watched single episode of a TV show ever. For a long time, it was the most watched thing ever on any note, including anything. So it opens up with Hawkeye in a psych ward, and you're like, this doesn't feel like MASH. I guess he had a mental breakdown. So, right, serious tone right away. Yes, there's jokes. There's your regular MASH humor. Eldon Alda co-wrote this. There's like 7 or 8 people that wrote this. And a lot of times you get too many people writing and it turns out shit. Man, this is great writing. The jokes are funny. So what happens is I remember watching this as a 13-year-old, and Hawkeye starts telling a story of the bus that he was on, and that they were partying, and this guy needs the bottle back here, and it's a whiskey bottle. For crying out loud, someone get this guy a bottle, and he's drinking the whiskey. Well, every time he says the story to Sydney, the psychiatrist that always came and went in MASH, it changes a little bit. The bottle wasn't a bottle of whiskey. It was a bottle of whatever they needed because he was a wounded soldier. And then a chicken wouldn't shut up because they had to hide from the enemy. And it turns out that it wasn't a chicken. The more they tells the story, you see the chicken in the flashback. It was a baby that was crying, and the mother had to kill the baby. She didn't kill an actual chicken. And when he remembers that, he has a breakdown as he's talking and he's crying, but it kind of, heals him and cures him. But I remember watching that going, this is the best written fucking thing I've ever seen in my fucking life. This is it. This is how good TV gets. It doesn't get better than that. And I tell you what, when it comes to TV writing, it's still up there for me. I've seen this finale many, many times, and so many things are going on at once in 2 hours too. So many parallel stories. You got Klinger falling in love with a Korean girl, and he gets married to her, and he was the guy trying to get out the whole time, and he actually stays behind when everyone else goes home. Honeycat, he gets orders to go home early, and he goes home, but then he has to come back because the orders were false. You got a tank that gets stranded right on the MASH unit, and then they're getting bombed 3 times at a time because the tank is there, so they have to get rid of the tank. There's a forest fire. Winchester finds these musicians. Now, Charles Winchester III is kind of a dick, and he's very selfish. And I kind of relate to him the most because as much as I think I'd like to be a Hawkeye in that predicament, I would probably be a Winchester. I'd be a dick and I'd be selfish. And I hate saying that, but I just know it. So I think the writers said, what are we going to give this asshole to lose and feel bad about? So what he loves the most is music, and got him through all the war. So they give him a group of musicians that he trains, and he, helps do Bach. Is it Bach or I think it's Bach. And of course, they get shot and die, and they come back, and then his heart breaks. They had to break Winchester's heart somehow, and that's how they figured they'd do it, through music. The goodbyes at the end, I just watched this last night, still get to me when they say goodbye to Potter. The kiss between Hawkeye and Houlihan, it goes on forever. It's so touching. They don't even say a word. They barely say a word to each other. They just kiss for about seems like 5 minutes, but it's hilarious because Potter, Winchester, and Honeycutt don't know what to do as they're kissing for so long. So you got Winchester pretending like he's looking through a book, and BJ's like going like this. So it's done with warmth, it's done with humor. And then I realized the I think most people have seen the goodbye written on the ground as Hawkeye flies off. And I've seen this so many times. And maybe I'm slow, maybe I'm an idiot, maybe I don't pay attention. But the whole time through the movie / episode, whatever you want to call it, BJ had a hard time saying the word goodbye. And this just hit me last night. So instead of saying it at the end, BJ wrote it out with bags or something, packed up something or other. So Hawkeye would see it. So instead of saying it, he spelled it out at the end. I'm like, oh, he couldn't say it the whole time. So that's how he does it. Man, it took me, 45 years to figure that out? How many years? 42 years to figure that out? Stupid me. So yeah, it makes you feel like, though, I would never want to go through what these people went through. But if I had to go through this, these are the people I'd want to go through it with. Gosh. Final episode. Oh, it's also called Goodbye, Farewell, Amen. Is that what it's called? Goodbye, Farewell, Amen, I think.
Yeah, I mean one of the all-time great TV shows, right?
Yes.
And the movie's
Local in
awesome.
my house, man, growing up.
The MASH movie's awesome.
Well, it totally is. Yeah, totally is. Yep. Cool. All right, I'll keep mine quick because I know we're all getting tired. It's been a long evening. My first pick is from 1978. 5 Academy Awards. Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter. Really great film that shows kind of what young people might go through when they're anticipating that they are going into war. And of course, this is the Vietnam War. So they show you all the events leading up to these group of friends going into the war. And of course, that Christopher Walken, Robert De Niro, John Savage, and George, however he's Zungia. I never know how to say his name. Zungia, I never know how to pronounce it. Anyway, so those three are going into the Vietnam War, and of course, Christopher Walken's character is the real tragic one in this particular group of people. But John Savage and Meryl Streep are the ones that, oh no, who gets married in this? No, it's Christopher Walken and Meryl Streep's character get married in the film. And no, actually, no, Meryl Streep does not get married.
John Savage gets married to just a local girl.
That's right. That's right. I think I'm getting confused about who actually got married here. But she was with Christopher Walken's character, correct? Because then eventually, after they come back, her and Robert De Niro start up a romance together. But anyway, it shows you what they all go through before they go in, and they have these kind of dreams that once they go into the war, they'll be together and they'll do what they got to do, and they'll come home, and it doesn't quite work out that way. They wind up getting captured by the North Vietnamese, and there's the whole water torture scene and the Russian roulette scene, which is really pretty harrowing at the time. And the whole middle part of the film is really all about the actual war, and before the opening is before they go, and then the after is kind of all the after effects once they do come home. And it's really a story about how the war in general affects people and affects friends. And none of these guys were ever the same after this. John Savage gets horribly maimed during the war. De Niro is probably the least affected, but he's not the same. And Christopher Walken's character totally goes off the rails, and he winds up staying behind, and he winds up going into these places where they do the Russian roulette thing for money, right? And he becomes one of the champions and whatnot. And De Niro goes to get him to bring him home, and it's like he doesn't want to go home. So it's a really, really great film. And we were talking earlier about these movies that you saw when we first got cable back in the late 70s. And I remember this is one of the first movies I watched, and I think it was either on HBO or Cinemax because we got both of them as a bundle back in the day when we first got cable. And I remember absolutely loving it at the time. And whenever it would come on TV, I would go and watch it. So yeah, that's my first pick. My second pick, we're going to go forward a year to 1979. Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now. An absolute classic. And let me tell you something, get the 4K, the big box set. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. Another great film. This one also about the Vietnam War, about the horrors of the war, what it can do to people. And here you have this decorated general, Colonel Kurtz, who winds up getting really twisted by what happens in the war, and he winds up becoming like this kind of like kingly messiah figure to all of these kind of refugees, often deepest, darkest Cambodia. And Martin Sheen's character actually gets hired by the military to go in and kind of take him out because this Colonel Kurtz is doing all sorts of bad things. And this whole film is this journey of Martin Sheen's team going down the river to go get to Colonel Kurtz to take him out of power. And everything that happens along the way is crazy. It's got a great cast. The acting is great. I know that Marlon Brando as Kurtz gets all the acclaim for this film, but I think this is Martin Sheen's best role ever, and I think he's amazing in this film. You got a young Lawrence Fishburne in here, and all sorts of other people. Harrison Ford's in this movie. Just it's amazing. It's also a very psychedelic and wacky movie. There's scenes in here that are like really really intense and just like yeah, you know.
And Robert Duvall is so great in
Oh,
that.
Duvall is amazing. I forgot to mention Duvall. That's one of his classic films as well. Even though his role is pretty small, but it's amazing. And then my last film, fast forward to about 20 years to 1998. Chris talked about before watching a film and getting teared up and getting emotional about it. When I saw Saving Private Ryan in the theater, my dad and I went to see it when it first opened up. I walked out of the theater and we got back in the car and I just broke down because this movie is just so hard hitting and so emotional. Everything that happens in this film and the journey it takes you on. I mean, from the opening, just brutal scene on the Omaha Beach at Normandy, one of the great scenes of all time in cinema, especially in war movie or any movie, which from what I read cost them like $12 million to do that whatever, however, 15-minute long scene or whatever. It's just the carnage is just crazy. And again, this journey that this group led by Tom Hanks going out to find Private Ryan, who lost all of his brothers in the war, and they made a promise to his parents to go find him and bring him home so they don't lose all of their children, and everything they go through to go and find him. It's just great, amazing, amazing war film. This is from World War II, takes place there. Some great actors too, playing some of the Germans as well. So great, great stuff. Great cast. That's my last pick. Saving Private Ryan.
But one thing you said with the Deer Hunter, I always think after you get done, if you get done watching that movie, you have to watch like Animal House or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like a palate cleanser, because it's just so intense.
It's a heavy movie, yeah, and even though like, and it's just as heavy for the drama part of it, let alone that middle section, when they're actually in Vietnam, right, which is crazy enough. But like everything that happens beforehand, you know that bad shit's going to happen. They're all at that John Savage's wedding. They're all getting drunk, and they're all, De Niro's running down the street, takes his clothes off, and they're all just kind of like, this is great. We're going to go off to war. We're going to do great. We're going to come back champions and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's not how it's going to work.
When De Niro runs into the guy just came back from Vietnam sitting at the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
The guy's like, fuck it.
Yeah. So he just, yep.
Also, John Cazale's last movie.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was just going to bring that up. So John Cazale and Meryl Streep were actually together as a couple at the time, and he was actually dying from lung cancer during the filming of this movie.
They weren't going to insure him, I think. They weren't going to insure him. Somebody, the De Niro, they paid for his insurance.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Great stuff. I think Davey brought that up at the top of the show about how some of these great war films combine like other things, not just a straight war film. And I think that for me, The Deer Hunter is one of the great dramas of all time, around a war theme. Right? So yeah, there we have it. Heavy stuff for this episode today, but that's war is hell, war is horror, right? And horrific and all that sort of thing. But we will be bringing you some lighthearted stuff next month, folks. Don't you worry. So we're gonna instead of really talking about film, we're gonna kind of deviate a little bit. We're going to actually do a little show and tell and show off some fun stuff, and those fun things are like toys. So we're going to be bringing a selection of like monster, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, superhero toys and collectibles and memorabilia and stuff that we have. So it'll be a little show and tell. It'll be a little fun, little deviation. So that'll be next month. So stay tuned for that. And let us know what your favorite war films are down in the comments below. Any era, any war, doesn't really matter. Could be comedy driven, could be action adventure, could be some of these horrific films.
Plenty to choose from.
Yeah, plenty to choose from, and lots more. We didn't talk about a ton, right? I mean, I own a ton of war films, and it's like it was hard just picking three. So many. Maybe one day we'll do another one. So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. For Jamie, for Dan, for Chris, for Craig, and for the birthday boy, Davey Gallagher, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time on The Monster's Den. Take care. Bye-bye.